This, right here, is my greatest fear. For most of my life, I have been terrified of social interaction and public speaking. This fear originated from the stutter I have had since elementary school. My stutter means that when I speak, I often get stuck on words, repeat phrases, or prolonged syllables. Whenever I speak, I always fear that I will stutter. This fear would in turn make my stuttering even worse, causing me more stress. It would form this never-ending downward spiral of anxiety, shame, and anger. Back in 5th grade, I ran for student vice president and made it to the final round. This round required a speech in front of the entire school. I prepared for weeks for this speech, writing up numerous drafts and practicing in front of my mirror for hours. I wanted to do an amazing job, but when the time came and I walked up on the stage, I stood in front of that podium and I looked out at the crowd, the words just would not come out of my mouth. I had stuttered before, but that time it was different. Under the spotlight, it was as if my words were frozen in ice, refusing to flow. Every single syllable felt like a monumental struggle. The anxiety was overwhelming. With tears in my eyes and adrenaline rushing through my veins, I stumbled my way through my speech. At every stumble, I could see kids in the audience snickering and sneering. Every giggle felt like a hornet sting, a reminder of the struggle I was facing. At every stutter, I could feel myself sinking ever so slightly into the hard carpet of the floor. As I painstakingly worked my way through the speech, I felt a wave of shame and anger. Leaving the stage, I had never hated my stutter more, and the shame and self-criticism of that day stuck with me. And from that day onward, I chose to avoid speaking as much as I could. That resolution lasted throughout middle school, as I made every effort to avoid speaking. There were many times when I had something to say but held back out of fear. There was this perpetual feeling of limitation and anxiety. While not as extreme, many of you will follow a similar approach of trying to avoid your fears. Many people believe that as long as they avoid their fears, that it will not harm them in their lives. However, this approach will forever hold you back in your life. It will always prevent you from fully achieving your dreams, because even if you do not encounter your fears, the very act of avoiding situations where they might appear will be what holds you back. That's why I believe you need to go outside of your comfort zone and face your challenges head on. Confront your fears directly. And the field of psychology offers substance for this. The comfort zone is a term coined by management theorist Alistair White, and it refers to a behavioral state where we act in a limited manner, often without a sense of stress. We feel safe and in control here, but we cannot improve. Our relaxation means that we have no incentive to push ourselves, no reason to grow. We need some amount of anxiety and stress. As you can see, there are different behavioral states for different levels of stress. With the minimal level of stress, you reside in the fear zone where you still lack self-confidence. With a little bit more stress, you will enter the learning zone where you can improve, but only in a limited manner. And finally, with just the right amount of stress, you will enter the growth zone where you can overcome your fears and challenges. Of course, too much fear is a bad thing, and we can see that applied in the Yerkes-Dodson law. In 1907, Robert Yerkes and John Dodson conducted an experiment to evaluate the relationship between stress and performance. They observed the performance of mice and the time that it took them to finish a maze under different levels of electrical shock. They observed that mice perform best under a moderate level of electrical shock, with more extreme shocks causing the mice to flee randomly out of panic. While the experiment was ethically questionable, their results formed the basis of the Yerkes-Dodson law, which details the relationship between stress and performance. Their law states that there is a Goldilocks zone of stress where performance is highest, and this is where we all should aim to be. Another topic in psychology that lends credence to the idea that some discomfort is needed is the idea of exposure therapy. Exposure therapy is a therapeutic technique founded on the idea of confronting your fears in a controlled setting. It says that by enduring anxiety-inducing or uncomfortable situations, you can reduce your fear response over time. It is a practical application of the idea that growth only occurs when we face our discomfort head-on. This technique is used widely today to help those suffering from severe anxiety disorders. While many of you may not have such extreme challenges, the concept of facing your fears and being uncomfortable when you're facing them, it can be applied for anyone. Push yourself to your limits and face your fears. Expose yourself to them. And there is a third topic in psychology that offers substance for this idea: the concept of neuroplasticity. Imagine your brain as a vast array of interconnected pathways, where each pathway represents a different emotion, feeling, or thought. For years, scientists thought that these pathways were rigid, unmoving structures. But today, neuroplasticity tells us that our brain is incredibly malleable. It has the remarkable ability to create new pathways and rewiring existing ones based on our experiences. Whenever we are in an uncomfortable situation, the pathways associated with that experience will activate, and the pathways will fire back and forth at lightning speed. The more these pathways activate, the stronger and more efficient they become. Well, initially, it will be difficult and arduous, but over time, the pathways will become well-worn and easily traversed. When we expose ourselves to discomfort, we are literally rewiring our brains for growth. For the many software engineers in the audience, imagine working with the machine learning model. If the model struggles with a certain subset of the data, you will focus more on that subset, exposing it to more of it during training. And during this training, if you're working with a neural network, the coefficients in the model might change. This is similar to the pathways in your brain evolving and changing. Take this approach which you use for machine learning and apply it to your own life. In my own life, I have tried my best to follow my own advice. When I was entering my freshman year of high school, I was terrified of social interaction and public speaking. I felt that as long as I developed my academic skills and had a few friends, I could live a happy and successful life. However, I gradually came to the realization that the ability to communicate and connect with others was a crucial piece to the puzzle of life, a piece that I was still missing. To overcome my challenges, I decided to confront my fear directly, and I decided to start the programming for data science and machine learning club at school. This commitment would mean presenting to a group of over 30 students every single week. At a time when I avoided speaking as much as I could, presenting to over 30 students was going to be quite a challenge. And in the initial phases of the club were grueling. I faced persistent struggles and started constantly throughout my presentations. Just like in my 5th grade election speech, I would repeatedly stutter, get stuck on words, and repeat syllables. However, I didn't back down. I kept at it, week after week, month after month. And gradually, over time, I grew more comfortable with speaking. And as my stress reduced, my stutter became gradually less pronounced. This wasn't a miraculous immediate transformation, but rather a result of stubbornness, strong support from family and friends, and me deciding to face my challenges directly. Apply this own approach to your own lives. Face your challenges head on. While my experiences revolve around my fear of public speaking, the thought of confronting your fears, of going outside of your comfort zone, of pushing yourself until you feel uncomfortable can be applied to any fear. If you fear speaking like me, find an issue you're passionate about and talk about it. If you fear rejection, try and gain sponsors for an organization or sell a product. If you fear failure, perhaps join a robotics team. If you fear conflict, get involved in debate. And the list goes on and on and on. Confront your fears in your daily lives, and you will improve. Just as Mark Twain said, when we confront fear head on, the only thing we have to fear is the death of fear itself. In the future, confront your fears directly and do not let them close the doors of opportunity that are waiting for you.